Everyone, this is the last session. I've had to get my energy up drinking coffee at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night. It's not a good thing, but I've done it for you. All right. Indigenuity. You all know what that is. It's the quality of being able to be naturally clever, original, and it's the native genius of a people living in relationship to the environment, in the web of life, in a place over time. And that over time is important. I've appreciated getting into the weeds of financials. We've gotten down in the weeds, brothers and sisters. We've gotten down. We had our good sister Hunter give us the dirt on soil. I'm going to go a little bit further than that. These are grassroots efforts at resilience. But that grassroots that we're looking at is that very first on the far, far left. Those grassroots are the European grasses we're growing here on lawns all over the country. You see all the other plants next to it? That's the native plants that grow on the prairie. Those roots go down deep and long, and they are resilient. They don't need to be cut every day. They don't need to be watered every afternoon. These are the kinds of models we need to be working with in terms of looking at long-term resilience. And Sally talking about the consciousness and Minnewichoni, it was up there very quickly. I don't know how many people know what Minnewichoni means. It means water is life. The indigenuity of the place, that's a Lakota word, the Upper Missouri River Basin. When the chairman of Standing Rock comes out and brings you indigenous knowledge, indigenous wisdom in saying with regard to the DAPL oil pipeline, which is leaked before oil ever moved in the pipeline. It already leaked, just standing still. We have no idea what's going to happen. We do have an idea what's going to happen with pressure on it. But the fact of the matter is, he said as an indigenous person, and he speaks from being rooted in that place for hundreds and hundreds of years, that we can live without oil. People all over, how could we do that? Well, they've done it. People have done it in North America for almost 40,000 years. It's possible. Any tribe that's here today comes from that 40,000 years of experience. Maybe they know something. Maybe. And he also said, we can live without money. Oh, that's even worse than living without oil. But there was the third piece of wisdom people need to get. He said, we can't live without water. That's why the water protectors were there. That's grassroots knowledge and wisdom. And we've got to be paying attention to the indigenuity of people still on the planet that carry that wisdom. Thomas Banyanka, years ago, I met him in New York at the UN in 79, when they let him in the door of the House of Micah, but they wouldn't let him at the General Assembly. He was there with other traditional leaders. And I was asking him about, how many people here have ever been to a reservation, Indian reservation? Good. How many people have any Indian ancestry connection? Maybe some? Okay, couple people. How many people here have treaties? You all do. Hello? Two parties need to make treaties, and every American is a party to more Indian treaties than any single Indian tribe. Think about that. These are your treaties, and there's ways to make them work for you. But what he said, I asked him about non-Indians participating in Indian ceremonies and rituals and the like, and he said, you know, this place, the earth, will speak to anyone who will listen. You don't need to have a particular blood quantum. You need to be able to listen and watch and observe. Like Yogi Berra said, you can learn and observe an awful lot just by watching. You watch the news, you see oil is not a good thing for our waterways. It's been problematic with pipeline spills up in the upper plains, into the grasslands, into farmers' fields, ruining them forever. We've seen this happening again and again. We've seen the DAPL security, Tiger Swan, those folks infiltrating the water protectors, trying to discredit the indigenous peoples. We hear people on the news this past week, sad thing with a shooter in DC, but what the right said was, we're protesting in New York against the Julius Caesar. We're protesting against left-wing violence against the right wing. Well, some people on the extreme left can be violent. And they've looked at it, and over the last several years, 2% of the violence has come from the left against the right wing. 74% of violence has come from the right against the left. Places like DAPL stand center ground in nonviolent, prayerful protest. You're talking, ask the general. Went through West Point, Supreme Allied Commander, the Northern Cheyenne and the Lakotas, the greatest cavalry in the world. They study their tactics. These are warriors. I visited at length with his son up there, who came up with a legion of veterans. And they stood with these warriors to give them a break, because holding forth peacefully and nonviolently can be very stressful. And that's what these folks did against the fossil fuel industry. So, looking at the big picture in Indian country, coming out of the weeds, we see that there's many crises. I made this map once, showed it from a PC to a Mac. From a Mac to a PC, it came out this way. And I realized if tribes could get doing renewable energy on every reservation, when the collapse comes and the lights go out everywhere else, they'll still be on in Indian country. So renew your relations with folks. What we're looking ahead at is heat, climate change. We get the polar vortex get cold, 20 below zero up in the pipeline, but we're going to be getting triple digits temperatures, not just 4 or 5 days, but we're going to get them for weeks at a time. We've seen it already. This is what's coming. Trammell, love you, brother, but we don't want Texas climate in Rosebud in South Dakota. But that's what's heading our way by the end of the century. Rosebud's going to look like Central Texas. We have a lot of information in here on the renewable programs. COUP has talked about here over the years, storage, looking at turning wind to ammonia, turning the Midwest, the Great Plains, into a renewable energy dynamo. It's the kind of thing that we're working with, even powering electric rail across the northern tier, coming from Indian country and the resources there, getting in tribes involved in building new markets, because it's hard to break into the old markets for renewables and the like. So finding those reservations with wind and solar along the route and use that route as a transmission corridor to the West Coast is fine. There's the built environment. I'm going to spend the rest of the time on this, my little time left. And as Amory Lovins always said, nobody cares about joules, megawatt hours, kilowatts. It's cold beer and hot showers. It's the services that energy provides. And that's what's critical. So we find out, and we don't want to forget in terms of the rush to renewables, that energy efficiency, it's much bigger than we think. They've estimated that by the year 2050, 85% of the energy demand, the new energy demand in the American West, can be met with efficiency. We don't need so much more generation if we use what we've got right. Tribes have had to be building green economies, like I said, 40,000 years. And they had to build housing out of the local material. And they had to figure out the engineering and design. And any tribe that's here today has got that history behind it. And then we've got policies that give everybody the same house that works equally badly every place. You can't get more egalitarian than that. And I take a little issue with the last panel talking about democratizing risk. We've socialized risk for a long time in this country, privatized profit, but socialized the risk. And we've got to really involve us more in both. Socialize the benefits as we can. Here's a good example of up at DAPL, up at the Cannonball, at the varieties of using solar, renewable, wind, teepees, straw. We had a building thing for how we were going to work out with straw bale for a longer winter camp kind of mechanism. We looked at putting in a whole design. Straw bale, we had a dinner at a house last night, a great opportunity. And I'm going to take you through a little straw bale school that was built to leave something permanent in the community. People built this in the middle of winter. They don't recommend straw bale in wintertime. It's not a good time to be building out there at 20 below. Plastering is a problem. But people did this, and they built it, and there was a schoolhouse to be given to the community. Beautiful, beautifully done. Lots of blood, sweat, and tears went into this, lots of frostbite. A beautiful school was built. This is the site. Actually, this is the site after it was built. It was bulldozed down. They wanted to move everybody out, didn't want any structures left. They bulldozed a beautiful, permanent straw bale long-term structure. We've got to work with our youth. We've got to work with the future, and we've got to recognize that Indigenous peoples have a whole lot to share and can lead the way in the new environments we're going to be finding ourselves in. Last piece, 2 court decisions came out in this past week. One was the court in Washington, D.C. found the tribe in DAPL was right. The Corps broke the law time and time again. The judge could have found that 5 months ago when the tribes told them, but it's at least now. Tomorrow they're going to find out, so what do we do about it? Remove the oil from that pipeline? Dig the pipeline out from under the river? Who knows what we'll be seeing. But in the meantime, tribes are celebrating a victory all over the place, including the White House. But another court ruling came down today, and it was against the interveners against the Keystone Pipeline in South Dakota. And the judge overruled all the objections and said the pipeline can go ahead, issued that permit. Indigenous peoples around the country are meeting together to find unified ways of dealing with the divestment and that kind of thing for dealing with pipelines. Last slide. I know you guys appreciate that. Yes magazine today just came out with Resistance That Just Won't Quit. Timeline of the Keystone Pipeline. I would tell you all to get a look at this article, but it's outdated because we just had another decision today. But we're going on to the Supreme Court in South Dakota to bring these issues again to the fore. Thank you, mahalo, wopila, che miigwech.